Hey guys, so today I want to cover a car that seems relatively unknown to most people, the SMS 570 Challenger. These were a series of very limited vehicles produced by SMS Supercars, which was owned by Steve Saleen. Instead of focusing on Mustangs, he released these Challengers beginning in 2009 and going until 2014. The performance line was based on the 2009 Dodge Challenger RT, and there were two versions, a 500 horsepower SMS 570 and a 700 horsepower SMS 570X. Both were fully certified, street legal, and had custom 5.7 liter V8 Hemis, and that's where that name 570 came from. SMS wanted to offer this Challenger as a more powerful alternative to the stock SRT8s. I will say that these 570 Challengers changed up a bit over the years, and by 2014 the lineup was a little bit different, but we'll be focusing more on the original SMS 570 and 570X models. Since there's a lot of information, I've decided to break up the video as you can see on screen, including how the car came to be, the interior and exterior features, performance, production quantities, and why the SMS Challenger failed in the end. So let's get started. First of all, to avoid any confusion, this is not associated with the high-performance Saleen Mustangs that are still produced by Saleen of Troy, Michigan. That company was founded by Steve Saleen in 1984, but he resigned from them in March of 2007 to pursue other business opportunities within the automotive industry. The Saleen brand name was trademarked, so it couldn't be used for other vehicles outside of that company. So Steve Saleen formed a new company, SMS Supercars, a year later in March of 2008. The SMS stands for his full name, Stephen Mark Saleen. The focus of the company was to work with American muscle cars and global supercars. He said that SMS would allow him to, quote, do what could not be done at Saleen Inc. due to their heritage with the Ford dealer network and Ford vehicles, end quote. So basically SMS allowed him to branch out and work with more than one automaker. For these Challengers, obviously he chose Chrysler. While Chrysler didn't actually get involved in the project at all, the SMS Challengers could be ordered through the Dodge dealerships or from SMS directly. The world first saw the SMS Challenger when Steve Saleen and his company launched the car on January 21st of 2009. That first car was serial number 1, and it's a very rare prototype as it was the only SMS 570 Challenger to be produced with the 6.1 liter V8 Hemi. You'll see the car finished in plum insane color on screen now. Oddly enough, they showed it off at the Temptation nightclub in Newport Beach on a Friday night. Saleen explained the decision, saying, quote, we have an exciting new vehicle and wanted to shake up the old standard introduction at an auto show, end quote. And after the release day, the SMS Challenger would go on a tour across the US to different shows and Dodge dealerships. Saleen would once again become associated with the Saleen automotive brand in April of 2012, so later 570 Challenger models in 2013 and 2014 were once again branded as Saleen's. As mentioned, there were two versions, the 570 with 500 horsepower and the more extreme 570X with 700 horsepower. But we will get into all the performance details in that section of the video. The prices were steep and they will vary depending on the year, but the 570 started between $60,000 to $67,870, while the 570X was between $80,145 to about $90,000. And these are the prices before any options were added. It's hard to justify the massive price increases over the top of the line SRT8 model, which started at just $40,220 in 2009, which is literally less than half the cost of the 570X. Each SMS 570 Challenger began its life as a stock RT model, and the car would be fully disassembled and rebuilt in the SMS factory in Corona, California. The models and base features would change as the SMS Challenger was built from 2009 until 2014, and the Challenger did get a refresh after 2010. As you'll see, everything is customized, from the drivetrain to the interior. And this isn't just a retuned product, but a fully remanufactured one, so customers are getting a lot more value in customization here. These cars also come with fully legitimate bumper-to-bumper warranties, although they are a bit shorter than the other factory vehicles. So the 570 gets a 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty, while the 570X has a much shorter 1-year, 12,000-mile one. The SMS team went from sketching out the design to delivering the car to the first customer in just 6 months. I find these SMS 570 Challengers basically look like some type of aftermarket ones. Most of the body panels are brand new, and there is an SMS Signature Series body kit that adds a ton of features. So this includes a custom front fascia with high volume radiator intake, a custom vented rear fascia with a carbon fiber rear diffuser and spoiler, a GTX style front grille, gray hash marks on the hood, and customized taillights. Everything is functional, as the splitter distributes air to the intercooler and the front brakes. The rear fascia has dual exhaust cooling vents, and the new side skirts are integrated with the rear brakes to provide more cooling as well. Both of the versions will look the same, but the 570X models have the different badging, and they do come with a carbon fiber body kit, while the 570 is made of reaction-injected molded plastic. One of the most notable additions on this Challenger was the red butterfly dual-side induction hood. As you can see on each side of the hood, there are twin butterfly valves that open as you depress the gas pedal. These are actually somewhat functional since they lead to a hole that's right above the air filter, although they probably don't do too much. Saleen also says that they wink at pretty girls, and that you don't have to street race anymore, just rev the engine and the butterfly is open, causing your opponents to back off. I think that this hood is really cool, and you just don't see that very often at all, but I'm not a fan of the grille with the 3 rectangular inserts. While the rest of the body looks good, unfortunately for SMS, the Challenger's design also really looked good to begin with, so it was hard to make it look even better than it already was with all their customizations. And if you really wanted the body kit but you couldn't afford the full model, they could be purchased for all Challengers from 2008 and up for $5,500 US, with a few add-ons available as well. Throughout the life of the SMS Challenger, there were also a total of 12 different paint colors offered. Some were custom from Saleen, while others were taken from Dodge. Surprisingly, Saleen charged you $18,000 for what they would call Saleen Custom Show Car Paint, available just for the 570X versions. So those custom colors included Pineapple Express, Sour Apple Green, Malibu, Liz Stick Red, Shark Skin, Plum Insane, Tire Smoke White, and several others. These are a unique paint job and they do look immaculate, but that 18 grand sure is a steep price to pay for some paint. Some of the more regular Dodge offerings were Brilliant Black, Hemi Orange, Toured, Plum Crazy, and Billet Silver. The customizations continue into the cabin. There are two-tone chevron SMS seats, with rich leather and Alcantara suede materials being used for a beautiful finish and maximum comfort. The doors are reupholstered as well, and hand-painted pinstriping can be found around the cabin. Right above the center stack, you can find a custom gauge pod that's added 2 different gauges to show the boost pressure and the air charge temperature. Other additions include a steering wheel emblem, Mopar race pedals, a short throw shifter, and etched aluminum door sill plates. On the passenger side, there is an SMS dash emblem that shows you the serial number of the car, as well as a personal signature from Steve Saleen himself. And owners also get a unique chrome key fob and SMS documentation. Obviously, one of the biggest draws of the 570 Challenger was the performance upgrade over the Challenger SRT8, which was the top of the line model at the time. So the SRT8 had the 6.1 liter V8 Hemi with 425 horsepower, 420 pound-feet of torque, and either a 5-speed automatic or 6-speed manual transmission. The 570 Challengers were all based on the 5.7 liter V8 Hemi instead. So those engines were supercharged on the 570 and bored out and supercharged on the 570X. SMS chose not to use the 6.1 Hemi because it had already been bored out to different dimensions. So if we get into the numbers, the regular 570 had 500 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque when running 4.5 psi of boost. So that's an increase of 75 horsepower and 80 pound-feet of torque over the SRT8 at a cost of roughly $20,000 to $25,000 more. The 570X ran 5.5 psi of boost and had a whopping 700 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque for 2009, and then 725 pound-feet after that. So that was a huge increase of 275 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque at a cost of between $40,000 to $48,000 more than the SRT8. So while that is a very steep price increase, those numbers were absolutely unheard of at the time in the late 2010s. In fact, the 570X is the most powerful coupe in terms of horsepower out of any other coupe made in 2009. On screen you can find the top 10 list of coupes ranked by horsepower levels, and the 570X Challenger is going to be the cheapest and most powerful in terms of horsepower on this list. One other confusing thing to note, very early on in 2009, there was an engine supplier change for the 570 program. So the early production 2009 SMS 570s were not supercharged, but rather naturally aspirated, getting a 6.7 liter naturally aspirated stroker motor, while the 2009 570X was supercharged. So that's something to keep in mind, but those changes were never really publicly documented. Other than those early iterations though, the rest of the 570s were supercharged from 2010 and up. So going back to the 570 Challenger, SMS started with the 5.7 liter Hemi and reused most of the powertrain, including the stock 6-speed Tremec manual transmission so that they could keep costs down. The 570 would get mostly bolt-on improvements to the engine, featuring the SMS 296 supercharger system that was designed by Lysholm Technologies AB. This supercharger uses a Lysholm twin-screw compressor that puts out 3.2 cubic meters of air per minute. There was also SMS's 6-pack intercooler system, which they claimed to be 60% more efficient than traditional box intercoolers, and that had a single-pass coolant flow, a bypass system to allow for off-boost cruising, a 90 liters per minute water pump, and a high-volume dual-pass heat exchanger. It also featured 39-pound fuel injectors, an 85mm throttle body, and a 100mm cold air intake. As for the more powerful 570X, only the 5.7 liter block was used, while the rest of the powertrain was reworked. So the Hemi was bored and stroked out to 6.7 liters, getting new heads, a new radiator, forged pistons, forged crankshaft, forged connecting rods, and a CNC ported aluminum cylinder head with new valve springs and camshaft. To deal with all the new power, the 570X would also need a custom 6-speed SMST manual transmission, high-performance clutch, larger half shafts, and a lightweight flywheel. The final drive ratio was 3.92 to 1. For those unable to purchase the 570 Challenger, SMS also made their 296 supercharger available as an aftermarket kit that could be fitted to any Mopar with a Hemi under the hood. Each vehicle did get a bunch of other performance upgrades as well. The SMS wheels were staggered, with 20 by 9 inches up front and 20 by 10 inch in the rear, with 275mm wide Pirelli P0 Rosso tires in all four corners. The brake rotors were slotted and drilled, or just slotted or just drilled depending on the year, and they measured 14 inches up front and between 13.7 to 14 inches in the rear, depending again on the year of the car. Calipers were also improved over the stock SRT8, with 6 pistons in the front and 4 pistons in the back. SMS claims the handling is much better, as they added an SMS Series 4 suspension system, including strut towers, new shocks, springs, and anti-roll bars. And they also made it sound good, with a high-performance exhaust and cold air intake. By 2013 and 2014, Saleen offered 3 different models, a 570 white label, black label, and yellow label, with between 400 to 575 horsepower, and much lower price tags. Unfortunately, while most of the other information was published over time, the production numbers were never released, and I've even seen some posts on various forums from Saleen forum administrators that claim to not know some of the final production numbers. SMS originally wanted to keep production under 500 per year for the 570 and under 150 for the 570X, but these weren't very popular, and some claim that there were only roughly 100 or 200 in total for the entire run. If you do have one, the serial numbers often skipped ahead randomly, and they could be customized, so that's not very telling of how limited they were. Some of the numbers I've found include 27 2010 models in total, including 8 570X and 19 570s, 15 models total for 2011, and 11 models total for 2012. These numbers may not be fully complete, but obviously shows that they were extremely limited. In my opinion, while the SMS Challenger was one hell of a car, they failed to capture their target market, as they ended up making nowhere near the projected totals. So I think this was a bit of a failure by the end of it, and I've come up with 3 reasons why. So the first reason is that while you can argue the high prices are worth it, considering these were literally the most powerful coupes from the factory in the entire world when they came out, many people were not going to pay over double the cost of a regular Challenger SRT8. These prices might have been justifiable for other brand names, like a Corvette or a Viper, but few wanted to pay $80,000 to $100,000 for a Challenger at this time. With options like those $18,000 paint jobs, Even just the regular 570 could rise up to over $90,000, and the 570Xs could skyrocket to over $120 grand. Meanwhile, a fully loaded SRT8 was in the $40,000 range. Even today's Hellcat Red Eyes are nowhere near those prices, and remember, these costs were back in 2009, so it was simply too much money to pay for a Challenger. The second reason deals with just the SMS 570 that had 500 horsepower. That car just wasn't improved enough over the stock SRT8 to warrant its $60,000 plus price tag. It's kind of ridiculous actually, when you look back at what you're paying for there. But that's $20,000 extra for some bigger wheels and 75 extra horsepower and 80 extra pound-feet of torque for $20,000. At least the 570X blew the doors off the SRT8, but the 570 didn't. When compared to the SRT8 with the 5-speed auto, the 0 to 60 time was very close, 4.4 seconds for the 570 compared to 4.7 seconds, and the quarter mile was just 0.4 seconds faster, doing 12.8 seconds, where the SRT8 did 13.2 seconds. And it also had the exact same stopping distance as well, so I'm not sure why the 570 was even built, when SMS could have just pushed the 570X a lot more and marketed that as their super powerful performance car. The 570s became even more redundant when Dodge released the second generation SRT8 in 2011 with the 392 Hemi that was basically just as good as the 570 from the factory for a lot cheaper. Note again that I'm talking about just the 570 and not the 570X. As for the third reason, several test reviewers including Motor Trend got their hands on the SMS Challengers, but they didn't find them very impressive. They did acknowledge the huge amounts of horsepower and torque of course, but they had many other complaints with the vehicles. There were problems with uneven panel gaps on the hood, where sometimes they'd be small enough for a piece of paper to fit, and sometimes large enough for a whole finger to fit through. The trunk lid sides and taillights were often not aligned correctly, and for some reason the hood and trunk weighed significantly more than the stock Challengers. What's worse is that Saleen just claimed that these were Dodge issues, and didn't really provide an immediate fix. Moving on inside, the reviewers claimed the gas pedal felt a bit strange, possibly from the extra springs and cables going to the hood butterflies, and they also said the brake pedal felt spongy. The custom seats were found to be overstuffed with material, jamming up against the center console, and those hand-painted pinstripes on the doors and dash looked good, but were flaking off after only 2,000 miles. Even if these issues were fixed over time, they definitely turned some initial customers away once seeing these types of reviews. So obviously at the beginning of production for these Challengers, the quality control at the SMS factory wasn't the greatest. So that's the end of this video, telling the entire story of the SMS 570 Challengers. SMS truly built the ultimate modern muscle car years before the likes of the Hellcats, with great looks and awesome performance. It really was the best 700 horsepower deal that you could find for 2009 or 2010, but as we went over, the car wasn't as successful as it was hyped up to be, and most people haven't even heard of these before. Maybe they came out too soon, as by 2015 Dodge had released the 707 horsepower Hellcat, becoming one of the most popular cars out there on social media, and selling thousands every year. What do you guys think of this 570 series from Steve Saleen? Did you ever own one of these? And if not, would you want one of these, or would you prefer a Hellcat instead? Let me know down in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, make sure to like and subscribe for all your Mopar content, and I'll see you in the next video.